What does it take to build a country from nothing? Not armies, not a revolution, but a laser printer, a vivid imagination, and the sheer, unshakable confidence of a master liar. In the late 20th century, as the world's borders seemed settled by war and treaty, a new nation suddenly appeared on the geopolitical stage. It had a grand name, the Dominion of Melchizedek. It had a flag, a national anthem, passports, and even a central bank. It received official-looking recognition from the governments of Zaire, Burkina Faso, and the Central African Republic. Its founders conducted state business from suites in Hong Kong and Los Angeles, selling everything from diplomatic towels to sovereign bank licenses for millions of dollars. There was only one problem. The country was a complete and total fiction. It was built on phantom islands, backed by a bizarre religious cult, and masterminded by a convicted fraudster from Idaho. This is the unbelievable true story of the greatest geopolitical con in modern history. A sovereign scam so audacious, it exposed how fragile the world of international diplomacy truly is. The story begins not with a treaty, but with a theological loophole and a man desperate for reinvention. In the mid-1980s, Gerald Gary Porter, a serial con artist with a history of stock fraud, found inspiration in the unlikeliest of places, the Bible. He became fascinated by the figure of Melchizedek, a mysterious priest-king mentioned in the book of Genesis. Porter, alongside his elderly partner in crime, Mark Logan Pedley, who went by Dad, concocted a radical idea. They wouldn't just start another scam. They would found a new theocratic sovereign state based on this ancient priesthood, claiming it had existed for millennia, and they were its rightful inheritors. To give it territory, they looked at a map. Their first claim was to the Malpelo Island, a tiny, barren, uninhabited rock 310 miles off Colombia's coast, used only as a military outpost. They simply declared it theirs. Next, they claimed Yamato Terra, a vast, non-existent swath of Antarctica, then Kerrang and Tangi atolls in the Pacific. The pattern was clear. They were claiming places so remote, so obscure, that no one would immediately check. They were building a kingdom in the blind spots of the world map. But declaring a country is one thing, making it look real is another. Here, Porter's genius for forgery and bureaucratic mimicry exploded into full view. He didn't just draft a constitution. He produced a stunningly detailed 40-page document filled with complex legalistic language about a bicameral legislature, a judiciary, and civil rights. He designed an elaborate state seal featuring a dove, a crown, and stars. He had professional printers run off thousands of copies of Melchizedek passports, driver's licenses, birth certificates, and vehicle registration plates. He established embassies and consulates by renting mail drop addresses in over a dozen cities worldwide, from Geneva to Manila. Most critically, he created an aristocracy of fraud. For a price, anyone could become a duke, a count, or an ambassador of Melchizedek. Porter appointed hundreds of these diplomatic officials, many of them unwitting dupes who believed in the libertarian or religious dream, and some who were knowing accomplices. These ambassadors would then use their impressive, gold-embossed credentials to open bank accounts, establish shell corporations, and lend the Phantom Nation a global network of apparent legitimacy. The scam's first and most devastating frontier was the world of high finance. In the chaotic post-Soviet early 1990s, Porter saw opportunity in the fledgling banking systems of Eastern Europe. The Dominion of Melchizedek began chartering banks. The most notorious was the European Union Bank, EUB. Using flawlessly forged documents and sheer audacity, Porter's agents convinced regulators in the newly independent and financially desperate Republic of Moldova to grant the EUB a provisional banking license in 1996. For a short, surreal period, a fake country's fake bank operated with a real license, accepting millions in deposits from around the world, promising high-yield offshore secrecy. When Moldovan authorities caught on and revoked the license, Porter simply moved the operation, attempting the same in Estonia and other struggling states. At its peak, Melchizedek claimed to have chartered over 900 banks, a ghostly financial network built on paper. The con reached its breathtaking apex when the fake nation began to be acknowledged by real ones. Porter and his agents expertly exploited the formal, often opaque nature of low-level diplomatic correspondence. They would send lavish, official-looking packages to the foreign ministries of small, developing nations, countries like Zaire under Mobutu Sese Seko, Burkina Faso, Tajikistan, fresh from civil war, and the Central African Republic. These packages contained Melchizedek's constitution, shiny passports, and eloquent letters proposing mutual recognition and economic cooperation. Astonishingly, it worked. Several of these nations, perhaps confused by the blizzard of official documents or seeing a potential ally, sent back letters of acknowledgement or recognition. These were not full-blown treaties, but they were on official government letterhead. For Porter, they were pure gold, proof he could wave at the next victim to prove Melchizedek's legitimacy. In its most brazen act, the Dominion applied for membership in the United Nations and sent a delegation to the World Health Organization. They were ejected, but the fact they got a meeting was a testament to the power of a good suit and a confident lie. The kingdom of lies required an army of enforcers and a fortress of ideology. This is where the story takes a darker, more bizarre turn. Dad Pedley was a high-ranking member of the Branch Davidian religious sect. Years before the infamous Waco siege, the Dominions claimed theocratic roots provided a convenient smokescreen and a ready-made network of believers who could be tapped for support. Furthermore, the government didn't shy from threats. When a 60 Minutes Australia crew attempted to investigate in the early 1990s, they were confronted by Melchizedek's Minister of Defense, an American named David L. McMahon, who warned them on camera that they were on sovereign soil and that his Marines were on the way. The crew, filming at a mail-drop embassy in Sydney, hastily retreated. The con was protected by a potent mix of cult-like belief and mob-style intimidation. The inevitable collapse was triggered by a dogged journalist and the relentless machinery of international law enforcement. Investigative reporter John Shockey, working for the U.S. Senate, began piecing the puzzle together in the mid-90s, uncovering the links to fraud, the fake banks, and the exploited nations. Simultaneously, authorities from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, the FBI, and Interpol closed in. They unraveled schemes where Melchizedek sold $100,000 sovereign guarantees for bogus projects, marketed fake blood diamond mining licenses in Africa, and ran classic advance fee frauds. Gary Porter was finally arrested, convicted on multiple counts of fraud, and sentenced to federal prison. Mark Pedley died before facing trial. The European Union Bank collapsed, leaving depositors in Moldova and beyond with devastating losses. The most unsettling lesson of the Melchizedek saga is not that a man tried to forge a country, but that the global system was, at least temporarily, fooled by it. The con succeeded because it parasitically attached itself to the real world's mechanisms of trust. International banking regulations designed to prevent money laundering were bypassed by presenting sovereign charters from a recognized state. Diplomatic protocols meant to facilitate communication between nations were weaponized to generate false legitimacy. Porter didn't break into the system. He presented it with paperwork that looked more formal, more exhaustive, and more bureaucratically perfect than that of many legitimate entities. He exposed a critical flaw. In a world that runs on documentation, we often lack a perfect, instantaneous way to verify the foundational truth behind the documents. We check if the forms are filled out correctly, not if the authority issuing them is a fiction. Melchizedek was a stress test on the paper-based reality of 20th century geopolitics, and for a while it passed. In a profound way, the audacity of Melchizedek holds up a dark mirror to the origins of many modern nations. How many real countries, after all, were born from contested claims, forged treaties, or stories of identity amplified into fact? Porter simply accelerated and caricatured the process, compressing centuries of myth-making and bureaucratic creation into a decade. His kingdom forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. How much of any nation's sovereignty is an unshakable, tangible truth? And how much is a collectively agreed-upon story reinforced by passports, border checks, and flags? Melchizedek proved that the theatrical trappings of statehood, the very things that make a nation feel real, could be replicated in a warehouse. It blurred the line between state and a state of mind, revealing that the power of belief is the ultimate currency, whether in a legitimate patriot or a fraudulent duke. If you are captivated by stories that live in the shadowy space between truth and deception, if you are fascinated by the moments when a single audacious lie rewrites the rules of reality, then you have found your channel. This is exactly the kind of hidden history we exist to uncover. For more deep dives into the greatest cons, secret operations, and forgotten scandals that shaped our world, do not forget to subscribe to Unseen Real Files. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story where the truth is stranger and often darker than any fiction.